Good morning to you. Now that you know how the roads are looking as you get ready to leave for the house, let's find out what the news has for you this morning. We have a newspaper review ready, panel is in place, introducing them shortly, but let's look at the front pages of each of the dailies. Start off with the People Daily's front page. MPs want Balala out over death of rhinos. House team says botched translocation of wildlife was motivated by a 2.5 billion shilling grant, and CS must take responsibility. That makes for the front page of the People Daily this morning. Front page of the Standard. Matiang'i Ruto ally clash over land saga. Interior CS refutes Kericho senators' claim that the DP asked senators to water down Ruaraka land report, which had implicated Matiang'i and other individuals in the multi-billion shilling row. That's a story that you can get right there on the front page of your Standard, and of course covered in detail therein. Front page of the Daily Nation. Dam scandal details that shocked Uhuru. Taxpayers are forked over 22 billion shillings, and chances are that it will never be recovered. Those are the details right there. A confidential technical report that left President Kenyatta seething with anger contains a litany of errors that could have, at best, seen Kenyans pay more billions of shillings to complete the project or end up with a white elephant in Elgeyo Marakwet County. That's a story that you can get, of course, in detail in your copy of the Daily Nation. We'll be looking at that as well. Front page of the Star. KRA to monitor M-Pesa accounts to nab tax sheets. Tax body banking on data protection bill to access your account. Facebook, Twitter, PayPal and Uber also targeted to raise revenue. That's a story that you can get right there as we move into it proper. And finally, front page of the Business Daily, 267,000 retail investors exit Safaricom since IPO. Accounts holding between 1 and 100,000 shares down to 554,000 from 822,000 in a decade. That's what the Business Daily leads with this morning. And of course, I have a very eminent panel in place to look at the big stories of the day right here. Good morning, gentlemen, ladies.
Morning. Good morning.
Of course, I have Mark Bichachi, political analyst, Nerima Wako from the Siasa Place, and Ben Muller, governance expert as well. To look at the big stories of the day.
Yes.
Let's look at the PD, as we start with that, of course. You have the story about Balala, or over the death of the rhinos. And now, you know, they always say follow the money. Yes. And you'll see what the truth is.
Absolutely.
A 2.5 billion shilling grant that apparently the WWF was supposed to get.
Yes.
And that's why they really pushed the government for this translocation,
yes,
for the rhinos to move, even if all the reports are saying that there was no need to do it. Experts saying you don't need to move these rhinos. Yeah. 2 rhinos already dead, and you want to move them to the same place. Yes. They are saying that at this particular point, the only way this is resolved is, first of all, to get this guy out of his seat. CS Balala should either resign or be fired.
No, actually, if you remember the story around the translocation of the rhinos, all expert advice indicated that it was not viable and it was not necessary. What I find most tragic is the utterances that the CS made around the issue when he told Kenyans to go to hell.
Right. And
that actually is an indicator of the kind of arrogance and impunity that has been condoned, especially that was condoned in the first term of since President Kenyatta came into office. Right. In my view, actually, Balala should have left office then. It is shocking that up to now, more than a year later, he is still in office. In my view, I think this needs to be taken, and at least now the MPs, because now most of them are beginning to get their foothold. They are no longer so much into the unnecessary politics we're seeing. I believe it is time they impeach this CS actually by the end of this week. And all the money that he has earned since the translocation of these rhinos as a CS, it needs to be surcharged. Because we can't have this kind of impunity in the cabinet. It is an insult to Kenyans. You know, it serves at the pleasure of the people of Kenya, not the other way around. And
it's interesting because even as Mula talks about, you know, tough measures in terms of even going for the salary that is earned since this particular point in time, it's not only peculiar to CS Balala. We are yet to see a scenario where any leader out of their own conscience feels that, okay, fine, let me just step aside first of all and let this matter clear. So even as we look at Balala, and yes, we might have him censured on this particular issue, we have very many other leaders who, you know, suffer the same fate of, okay, fine. And we've heard the statements, over my dead body, I would rather be dead than live. We've heard people say such utterances. How do you deal with this impunity that we see? We can see you did something wrong, Nerima, you dropped the ball in your office, but you're adamant of not going anywhere.
Well, it's the responsibility of our leaders, which we do not have. I think the only CS who was fired was Echesa from sports. But even so, people still said that he was headhunted, it wasn't fair. There are particular departments who have done worse, including health and scandals that have been involved. But we haven't seen people step aside or fired. And that's an issue with our leadership, because some of the things that happen within our government, certain decisions that are made, you'd not see that happening in your own company or private company. Right. Even if money is lost, someone has to hold the responsibility for it. Someone has to be held accountable for it. And when it comes to our leadership in our government, apparently they're above the law. And those are things where, even though we talk about Chapter 6 and Chapter 6 not being followed through, which is very difficult, because it's almost as though it's that perfect individual when we talk about integrity, or even the kind of businesses that people within these positions can be able to hold. A lot of our leadership are not following Chapter 6 of our Constitution. Right. They don't even try.
And even as you say that, because at one point we always say it takes two to tango, Mark. Yes, we have a public service and we have the face of that being Balala, but on the other side, as far as this story is concerned, we also have the WWF. And this is a story that has been seen in different areas. They say even with corruption, it's not Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Ministry of Health. There's a private entity at times on the other side as far as this is concerned. With the allegations of the WWF being behind this, what move should be made towards that particular sector in terms of making sure the private sector is also held accountable, whether it's NGO, whether it's a limited company, to make sure that next time you try and push such a move, you do know that you'll suffer consequences as well. I don't quite understand why we have to go to the technicalities of this issue when the CS told us all to go to hell. Just that statement alone, just that statement alone should have brought his career tumbling down, because that is not something that is acceptable of any civil servant. It is not acceptable of any Kenyan. But you see, there's a bit of complexity here, in the sense that it's not just the WWF. There's been a lot of tangle between KWS and private conservators across the country, who are more interested in pleasing Western interests than really looking at conservation and how it works in Kenya. And that's really the biggest problem, that conservation in this country is a bigger concern to the West than it is to us. And therefore, the people who do it tend to pander towards the West, who are financing it towards their own ends and means. You know, it's quite interesting that African countries listen to Americans, and how much forest have Americans left? None. You understand? How many animals have run extinct in Europe, right? So the issue is this, that Africans know and have known for a very long time, and you can ask the Maasai, you can ask the Samburu, you can ask the Pokot, you can ask the Luya, on how to live next to animals. We've done it for a very, very long time. And there needs to be a rethink of how we approach conservation. Because if you consider and teach people that our wild animals and our forests are a resource, we will not overexploit them. And that's the problem. If you look at the bounce back of animals in Namibia and in South Africa, I'll tell you why. It's very simple, because you can go to a restaurant and have kudu meat and have impala meat and have all of those things, because they understand that that is a resource for the people. And when you understand that, then the people are interested in conserving those things. The people who are watching me at home, those who live in Nairobi, how many even know where the entrance for Nairobi National Park is? Right. They don't know, because they don't visit it. So the failure is not just in terms of allowing WWF to do what it did, but it's also in terms of not recognizing that there is need to sensitize the public that this is a national asset, something to be proud about, which again is another failure. So for me, the moment he said, and I said this when he said it that day, listen, the moment he told us to go to hell, we should have booked him a ticket there ourselves. Well, and it seems like he just might go there as far as this committee is concerned. It's sorry that you can get right there as well. Before I leave the people daily, KEBS public health officers on warpath over food inspection. That's a story that you can get on page 2. A mandate battle is reported to have led to clearance of questionable commodity drugs to enter local market. So you have an issue where we have KEBS on one hand, we have public health officers fighting to actually inspect these particular commodities. Yes. And at the end of the day, we're the ones consuming whatever passes by. So as these two are fighting, who takes care of the common Kenyan? Because as we decide who goes to look at the consignment, that's when all of these porous issues start. Absolutely. Yeah. For starters, you realize that there has been very serious concerns about the standards, because KEBS is meant to maintain standards
or ensure that standards are observed, especially in the importation of commodities into the country and even locally produced stuff. Unfortunately, because of the levels of corruption that have infiltrated the system at KEBS, most of the times actually KEBS is behind the amount of poison Kenyans are consuming, which is very unfortunate. We remember even from the time the late Dr. Kyoko Mangeli was CEO, the clearance of maize that was infected by aflatoxin. Up to this particular point, we have continued to see consignments whereby KEBS or some officers within the same organization flag over consignment that has arrived at Mombasa as unfit for human consumption. Then suddenly it is cleared as fit for consumption. I'll give you a scenario. About a month or 2 months ago, there was a consignment of cooking oil that had been detained at the port of Mombasa for over 15 months. Then suddenly, KEBS had already flagged it as unfit for human consumption. Then the CS, Munya, cleared that consignment. Now that actually is an indicator of the stakes at hand when it comes to public good versus individual selfishness. Because what we have been seeing and why they are fighting at the moment is a case of who wants to be eating from this process.
Right.
It's not about it's not about really that they care for the Kenyans. It's about really who should be eating from this process, because you know it's diverse. From KEBS is also involved in standardization, basically on all commodities, from motor vehicles to medication to food and all that. So this conflict with public health officials is about perhaps individuals from public health feeling that KEBS is overstepping their mandate and vice versa. And this should not really be an issue, because it's really an issue of basic reorganization within the departments to have a clear understanding of who should be handling what.
Ben is saying that it's all about who gets to eat at this particular port. And then again, Nerima, the question is raised, transparency. How do you make sure the process is more transparent so that whoever who is there can't get to eat? Because if we had that, probably no one would want to be fighting to be there for their own self-interest.
Yeah, I don't think it's just transparency, because also Ben mentions the overlapping of roles and even the battle between institutions and whether some are taking more roles than others. And actually, public health officials are accusing KEBS of being a cartel. And it's not that these issues or these situations are not transparent. They are. People even are able to identify some of the companies that don't exist, or proxy companies, or some which are owned by particular individuals. But it's back to impunity and it's back to corruption. And those are the main issues. But what worries me the most is that the fact it's things that we consume. It means that people are more concerned of what gets into their pocket, whether it even means that someone loses their life over this. Right. And that's the part that I find very difficult to understand.
Right.
Yeah.
And as we're looking at this, we already have a multi-agency team that usually goes to inspect at the port. We have KRA, KEBS, all these teams that go in to do this. Should we just look the entire process? Get one outfit that does that isn't any of this? How do you solve this once and for all?
So if we have one outfit of thieves, it's better than 3 outfits of thieves. You see,
does it mean we're doomed if we do, doomed if we don't?
No, you see, the thing is, and this is something that the president mentioned that we didn't give much attention to. Any positive business environment is built around predictable results. And the reason why Kenya's economy struggles quite a bit is because hard work is not necessarily equal to success, because when you factor in corruption, there are so many things that come into play. So the real solution is this. The real solution is we've got to make it so punitive, so dangerous to exercise any kind of corruption anywhere. That is what must happen. And let me tell you the effects of KEBS sleeping on the job. Saturday I did an experiment. I went to a mall, and then there were these 3 girls who said they had nanotechnology, that if they apply on your phone, it will not crack. And then they had a drill, which they would put on your phone screen and drill. Yes. Now, of course, that looks very impressive, except when you look at the drill bit, the top of the drill bit, you realize that the drill was blunt. Okay? Wow. So they were never really drilling your phone.
Or just making noise.
Yes, so they apply some funny coat on your thing, charge you 1,500 shillings for it. Now, what does that tell you? You see, there is no way by looking at the substance or looking at your phone after that you can tell that you've just been conned off of your 1,500 hard-earned shillings. It's only KEBS that has the equipment and the capacity to test those things. But because of corruption cartels, they are very happy to let that product come in. Now, where is the conflict between them and health officials? Number one, KEBS is supposed to maintain and do spot checks on various products. But also health officials are supposed to do the same thing. So you cannot then start arguing with KEBS that they've not done their job when you are also not doing your job. When was the last time you saw a health official? Do you even know their uniform or their badge, how it looks like? When you go to a restaurant, have you ever seen them coming out of the kitchen having inspected it? Of course not, because I'll tell you for free, on good authority, that a lot of the health officials, especially in the city of Nairobi, all they do is go around collecting bribes from hotel managers and restaurant keepers and things like that. They don't inspect. They drive Mercedeses and whatever's in these streets of Nairobi doing no work at all because they don't inspect. And I can prove to you they don't inspect. How many videos do we have of vegetables growing in sewage? How many videos do we have of people refilling water bottles from taps?
But Mark, that's why we're asking, with all of this that you can see, because clearly the system is wrong. The people in place are not doing what they should be doing.
Yes.
How do we solve that?
First, make it very punitive for corruption. Then number two, just have the common decency of choosing and selecting people and promoting people in civil service who are known not to be corrupt.
Absolutely.
That's the biggest problem. Today in civil service, how many people who are not corrupt even qualify to be given the next rank in the job? That is the biggest problem.
Right. So reward good performance
reward
and
good
integrity.
behavior. There are lots of civil servants, you'll be surprised, who are not corrupt.
And you realize also, I think Bwana Kinoti needs to take this up. He needs just to serve proper shock therapy to KEBS, the same way it's done at KRA. Right. Today it is very exciting. You can walk into KRA and get services and nobody will want even to collect 100 bob from you. And the same that has happened within the immigration department. So it needs just to place his guys there for a couple of weeks, establish those guys who go to, especially importers and these manufacturers, especially the local ones. We have seen cases of Kenyans dying from poisonous alcohol and those kinds of things. Those are basic failures of KEBS. So place your guys there, then establish quickly the fellas who have been behind that scheme to scam the government. Arrest them and charge them in court. Nobody's going to go to be the next one. Next time when they visit a supermarket and they find expired commodities, we have seen in Kariobangi people packaging expired unga into new packets. Those are failures from KEBS. So it is very basic actually. The DCI now has the political will, especially from the president. That is what needs to be seen. Right. And believe you me, Kenyans are going to begin to consume healthy stuff again. Okay, we're going to take a short break at this particular point. Keep the tweets coming in at K24 TV. After the break, of course, we have to talk about the headline in the Star, KRA to monitor M-Pesa accounts to nab tax cheats. Are they coming for you? That's a question we need to ask. And also, it's 6 years since the Westgate attack. What are the lessons we've learned? How are we moving forward as far as that's concerned? That and plenty more, of course, are right here. This is a news review after the break.